Welcome to With Creative Company, a podcast where we dive deep in all things business as creatives. We give our personal take on things that actually move the needle and also chat with entrepreneurs about their experiences in running a business. I'm Jordan. I'm Amy. Let's get creative.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hello. Today we have a awesome guest. Her name is Audrey Schumacher. Audrey owns Schumacher CPA, so she's an accountant, which we're really excited about because while it's not technically a creative business, it is someone who supports creative businesses and holds us accountable for the important stuff like our money.
Yes.
But yeah, we'll hop on over to you and you can kind of give yourself an intro and like a little brag reel because you deserve it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Audrey Schumacher. I have run my own CPA firm, I guess officially for a year and a half now. But I was kind of doing some side work for a while now when I was working for some big firms. So I got my accounting undergrad, started working at a firm, big public accounting type thing. It was not my scene. I did learn a lot. But I definitely was always leaning towards running my own company. And again, like even though it isn't a creative company, I think I have learned a lot of things, both to help creatives and help myself run a business. So I left my corporate job officially around last Thanksgiving, and have been doing taxes and bookkeeping for lots of different types of businesses and individuals since.
So two really cool notes. One is, Audrey, how old were you when you got your CPA license? Because I think it's awesome.
I was 23.
Oh my goodness.
Which is amazing. And
It's
awesome.
incredible.
Pretty young for CPA stuff. The other thing I just wanted to say really quick, because I'm very excited about this. I feel like this is probably, I'm going to go on a limb and say, this is probably the first time that a creative business podcast has been hosted by 3 pregnant and expecting women, which
Not one, not two, but 3.
It's in the air.
Something was in the water.
yes. So business and motherhood, we love it. It's so exciting. But anyway, we can actually hop into the real topic
That's
now.
incredible. Okay, I have a silly little question. Are most of your clients here based in Nashville, or are they kind of all over?
So most of my clients are in Nashville or Middle Tennessee area. Okay. I will say I've been honestly surprised by the amount of people who aren't looking for any in-person communication, which has actually made it really easy for you. Yes, very easy for me to grow my business, especially as I don't know, I can kind of run it through a customer management platform.
Yeah.
And it helps me do a lot more work faster, honestly. But yeah, most of my clients are around here. I'd say probably half of them are in somewhat creative industries. I have a lot of graphic designers, photographers, videographers, and then others are just regular W-2 jobs. Yeah. That kind of thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. Well, Jordan, I'm going to let you take the lead. We always make me ask first questions.
Perfect.
So
I'll take first question. So I think what we wanted to talk about first, leading up to kind of this tax season, is maybe kind of some of the bookkeeping side of things. So maybe some good practices or tips that you would have for creative entrepreneurs to kind of throughout the year, or just kind of like rules of thumb that they should look at when they're setting up their business. We did have a conversation about pricing your worth a couple weeks ago. So we kind of talked about setting money aside for taxes and things like that, expenses. So hopefully our listeners took that hint. But maybe go in a little bit more depth of like the bookkeeping side of things that is leading up to big, tax season as we approach.
Sure. So I would say the biggest, most important thing about bookkeeping is however you're going to do it, you just need to sit down and do it every month. I think the biggest issue I see is people not doing any of it and then being in a frazzle at the end of the year because they haven't done any of it.
Yeah.
And that's a bad situation to be in for a few reasons. First of all, you have no idea how well your company is doing.
Yeah.
And I think to make good business decisions, you need to be pretty in the loop with your own business. You need to see what you're making every month. You need to see what you're spending every month. You need to know all of that information. So looking at all of that and keeping up with it at least monthly is huge. And then at the end of the year, you don't have to do all this cleanup work. You don't have to go digging for things. You don't have to be asking your accountant a million questions about things when they're charging you for it.
Right.
It's a way that you can honestly save money because accountants, especially CPAs, are not always cheap. It can become a really expensive service when you've gotten yourself in a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most of my expenses are automated, like their subscription payments, and they're going out every month.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty easy, but I'm not going to lie. All of my other receipts from the entire year are in a wad in the back pocket of my purse. So like if I lost my purse, I would be doomed.
I've done about I feel like halfway through the year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I need to start back in October. Like that's where I need to go back to like do my other expenses.
But again, all my big stuff is like automated and it's in my QuickBooks. But I like every year I think I'm going to do better. And then every single year I just shove receipts in one spot.
I feel like maybe I should not be giving the tips here, but maybe this will help us all creatives be like good at this, is like say, hey, this is the one day a month I'm going to do this. And after I do this, I'm going to go buy myself a cup of coffee or like have like a little treat. Be like, listen, you did it. Congratulations.
Yeah, you just have to get it done.
Yeah.
And one thing that can help, having the QuickBooks automated, if you feel like paying for QuickBooks is worth it for your business, which the more different transactions you have, the easier that makes it.
Yeah. I feel like I pay for like their lowest plan and it feels very worth it for me.
Yeah,
like it's
I think
probably
it's worth it too.
$25 a month. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then you can set up the rules. You can set everything to automatically do, split out into the correct expense categories. You can invoice from there. I love QuickBooks. But I guess one other thing that would really help if you're not doing this already is making sure you're really keeping separate your personal and business expenses. Having a separate bank account, having a separate credit card, debit card, whatever you want to use. Keeping those things as separate as possible will help so much for your own mental well-being when you're doing your bookkeeping. And then if your accountant does have some questions and needs to dig through some things, if you ever get audited, oh my goodness, the audits are so much worse when there is commingling, which again, audit risk is pretty low, especially like if you're not making millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
But it really does help things stay clean if you can keep things separated.
Yeah, I guess especially if you have like a business license, you kind of have to keep that separate, right?
Yeah. Do you have a lot of clients who don't do that? Because I can't imagine like having my business income going straight into my
I
bank
definitely
account.
didn't for the first couple years.
Yeah.
I mean, I do now, but
Well, yeah, when I first started my business and I like wasn't even paying taxes because I was like in high school.
Yeah.
Then yes, I was just making bank.
yeah.
But like ever since then, I feel like it would be so stressful.
It is stressful and people still do it. More people than you would think do it. And I think it's not out of not meaning to. It's just, oh, I forgot that this was this card and I have a million credit cards in my wallet and this account had money on it and this account didn't. And that's why I think it's another reason to stay on top of your finances, both business and personal.
Yeah.
Because you need to equip yourself to be in a situation where there's some money on your business card, there's some money on your personal card, which is which. Like I literally have tape on both of my credit cards, and one says work and one says home.
There you go. It's as easy as that.
It's as easy as that.
I have a million debit cards because of the way our budget works in our family, but I just have my business in a completely different bank,
Same.
which means it's a completely different color card, which helps a lot for my brain.
Yeah. I have a business bank that's separate from our personal, and then I have a business credit card too that's separate because I don't know. I don't want to keep them different.
Another tip in the banking world of things that I don't see people take enough advantage of is not leaving so much of your money in a checking account and moving it really quickly to a high yield savings. That is one super easy step you can take. So like I use Ally Bank, for example, not sponsored, but they have a really good high yield savings account. It's a totally online bank. So when I have a certain amount, like my business, I don't have high expenses.
Yeah.
So I don't need to leave over a certain amount of money in that account because I mean, most of my work I'm doing from my computer.
Right.
And so after it hits over a certain amount, everything is automatically going into that high yield savings account and it's making interest. Anything that I'm setting aside for taxes is going there. And then you're able to make a little extra money.
Yeah.
But it really adds up fast.
Wow.
Especially as interest rates right now are still pretty high.
Right.
Do most banks have like a high yield option? I feel like I've never researched that a lot. And like for me, it's like, well, I already have a bank. I really don't want to deal with the hassle. So like if someone else was thinking that, do you feel like their bank probably has some kind of choice, but they're just not looking at it?
Mine didn't. So I don't know if this is the same for other banks, but I use Regions for all of our personal stuff. And I have our business checking accounts through them. But they don't offer a high yield savings. They have a savings.
Ours doesn't either.
Gotcha.
Good.
I would say I've done a little research on it because we talked about this on our Price Your Worth. And because we don't pay taxes quarterly, we wait till the end of the year to pay them in. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, instead of the IRS doing that and making money off of my money, why don't I make money off of my money and do that? And there were a few, I think I looked at the Allied one. I think maybe Apple Card has a high yield savings, I think, and maybe Capital One. I can't remember, but it's like not a lot. I feel like you have to like kind of do your research with it.
One note, if you're not making quarterly payments every quarter.
Audrey's gotten on to me for this before.
I need to know.
I will say, because again, interest rates are high, so you can be making a lot of interest in your bank account, but the IRS is also charging a lot more interest than they used to.
Okay.
So if you are not paying in through the year, they will start accruing interest and penalties. Sometimes it's not a lot, sometimes it's a lot.
Yeah.
So there definitely there are pros and cons to waiting towards the end of the year when you actually file, but there are definitely pros to paying in quarterly because you think about like a W-2 employee, if you're getting your paycheck every 2 weeks and the company is withholding the taxes, those are getting paid to the IRS through the year. And that's why they're charging you. That's why they set up estimated quarterly taxes because they're still wanting to get self-employed people's taxes through the year as well.
Right.
I also don't do that, and it's something I need to correct. So I have a random question for you, and this might not be something you can fully answer, but I feel like one reason I don't do quarterly payments is because I find the process overwhelming. Like it's not super clear how to do it on the IRS web. Like it just stresses me out. And every time I've tried to do it, I've just gone and then I quit. Do you feel like it is as overwhelming as I'm making it? Or is it one of those things that like once you do it once, you know how to do it and it's fine?
I'd say that. I'd say as long as you're staying on top of your bookkeeping, you're looking at, say you need to pay taxes for quarter one, and that's going to be January through March. Those are due April 15th.
Okay.
So what you're going to do is you have your bookkeeping, you have your income and expenses through March. You're taking 20 to 30%, however much you want to do in that realm, taking that out of your net income after you've taken all the expenses. And then you literally, I think the website is irs.gov/payments, direct pay. And you just go right on there. The steps are pretty simple. I think you have to verify who you are through some information from your prior year tax return, but it's probably not something you probably don't need to pull up your tax return for. It's like your name. If you're married, it's going to be like my husband's name is the first one is the information that I have to put in because I have him like first on our tax return. But I just put in his name, his social security number, the address that we filed under that year. For the prior year.
See,
and then I just
like
put in the number.
I like that because I've had some people say previously, like, oh, just base it off of like what you made during that time in last year. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really work for us because
not
we
for small businesses.
It just doesn't work that way because it may be way over or it may be way under. And I don't
And that's
like
where I
that.
got overwhelmed, just because when I read this stuff on the IRS website, it was like, take your year estimation, divide it by this, and then pay this much. And I was like, what?
It's
Like,
super
doesn't-
confusing.
don't work
the way
like
they
that.
Put it.
So I'm just going to re-listen to what you just said, and I'm going to do it next year.
Same. We're keeping ourselves accountable here.
I think it's more simplified. The IRS is constantly growing and changing their laws and their regulations. And as administrations change, all of those will change again.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps me in a job. However, it is extremely overwhelming to everyone else in the world, and is overwhelming to me sometimes too.
Yeah.
So I think the more we can do to simplify the processes, the better, because it is very aggravating for everyone in the United States to be held to something that pretty much no one understands.
Right.
And
And
I
it
guess-
changes.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you don't do your estimated payments correctly, all that's going to happen is you're going to owe more at the end of the year.
You
Correct?
will.
Or get
It's
money
not
back.
like you're going to get.
If you pay in too much.
If you pay in too much, you'll get money back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess you kind of have to weigh the cost benefit of if you feel like you could have been making interest on that money
Right.
or whatever, but also they're racking up interest and penalties on you. And the
Right.
penalty has continued to grow over the
Okay.
years. I'm not sure what it's going to be
Maybe I
this
got
coming
outdated
year.
advice. Because it's like if they used to not be that high, then
They
it makes
used to not be that
sense,
high.
right? But now we live in such a different
Well,
world.
for me,
But
it's like I feel like I've never noticed a huge amount of the penalty, but I've also just never really read into how much money I was losing. I've just
Right.
gone, well, that looks like a decent amount that I am paying in.
Sure. And it may
Yeah.
only be a couple $100 of
Yeah.
penalty.
But still.
But it will grow as your business income
Business
continues
grows.
to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will
is that a
also grow.
service you provide to people paying in quarterly? Or
It is.
Okay,
Mhm.
very cool.
Yeah. So that's one of those things that I'm happy to explain to people. Hey, if I were you, I would just keep up with your bookkeeping and put in this %. This is where you do it. But some people would rather me do it, and I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That keeps your business afloat throughout the year instead of just January.
yeah. Yes.
And do you have any other like really simple tips for bookkeeping that you feel like are important for creatives, or do you feel like those are your like go-to, like these are things you just should be doing that are going to help you out?
I would say just generally, if you don't have a QuickBooks account, if you don't want to get some kind of bookkeeping application, which is honestly, I think it's easier to do that, but you also do not have to overcomplicate. Like my husband runs his business. He has a custom trim carpentry business, and he runs it off of a Google sheet. I think you said you did too.
Same.
And there's a really good Google template on Google Sheets, and it has, you can enter all these categories, and you can do it monthly, you can do it yearly. And it pulls together a really quick profit and loss statement for you. And I think it's great.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of in the starting stages of your business, not generating enough income yet that you feel like you should be spending money on a subscription, just start on a QuickBooks or on a Google Sheet or whatever you want to do. It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Can I give 2 little tips for people who are using QuickBooks?
Go for it.
My first would be, it's the same as the quarterly payments thing. I feel like when you first open it, you're like, what is this? How does it work?
That's how I felt.
But once you like have some basic knowledge and you've like used it, I feel like it makes life so much easier, because like my business insurance is just assigned a thing. So every single month when it comes out, QuickBooks just goes, oh, that's business insurance. And then I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, because you can like link your accounts, right? With QuickBooks. See, that's
It
pretty
just
cool.
flows right in.
The other problem though is you have to be really careful, I feel like, at the end of the year when you look at your reports, because like last year I made an error. And so when I get money, I move money to savings for taxes. And I had like not categorized that correctly in QuickBooks. And it was counting that as like more money going into my bank.
Oh, like more
so
income.
at the end of the year, I had like this massive amount of extra income. And I was like, where is this coming from?
You were like, hold on.
And then I finally figured out that it was transferring it as an additional amount instead of a transfer between accounts. So I will just put it out there that like if you are using QuickBooks and you don't have an accountant, then you need to like do your work. Don't
due
trust
diligence.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, double check on everything.
But it is helpful, I feel like, once you're used to it. So we've already touched on taxes like a little bit, but we are really close to tax season. do you have like a couple primary things you would recommend for creatives and entrepreneurs who are like preparing to do their taxes this year?
Hire Schumacher CPA.
Yes.
Yes, start with that. No, but I would say staying on top of your bookkeeping through the year. Having an accountant, if you are running a small business, they really can help you find more deductions that you may not know about or may not know how to do. I'm not one to, if someone has a really easy tax return, I'm going to tell them that they should probably just do it on TurboTax. I don't want to be charging people a ton
You're an
of
honest
money.
girl.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an easy return, if you're just plugging in a W-2 and an interest statement, awesome. That's not usually the case for creative businesses or
Right.
just small businesses in general. There are a lot of deductions you can take advantage of. A few of them that come to mind is a self-employed health insurance deduction. That can be a really helpful one. If both you and your spouse, if applicable, if you both work for yourself and if you have self-employed health insurance, that can be a massive deduction. There's the home office deduction, and there are a couple different ways it's done. So an accountant can help you figure out which one's going to save you more money. And that helps you deduct basically if you have a section of your house or a section of your apartment that is all business related, you are able to get back money for your utilities, your rent, your mortgage, all of that
great.
kind of thing.
What if you don't have a section, but you do have a laptop that sits on your coffee table? Does that count? Because like Jordan and Seth have this fancy schmancy office.
We do.
studio. I don't. I have a laptop. And I sit in different parts of my home and I work there.
But you are working out of your home.
yes.
That's a good 5%. Gotta be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
Do
don't
not
have to
take
answer this
anything I'm
legally.
saying
Yeah.
as legal advice.
Okay.
But you're working totally out of your home.
Yeah.
The majority of the time, like that in coffee shops.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You take the square footage of the total space you have, and then you take the square footage of what you feel like is really heavily business use.
Okay.
That's
Gotcha.
great advice.
Yeah.
So the square footage of the end of my couch.
There, you got it. You got it, girly.
A solid 6 square feet.
Listen, 5%.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry,
That's
I know
great.
that was a silly question.
No, it's helpful because I think a lot of people don't have an office set up. And now that we're having a baby, our office is turning into a nursery and we're having to kind of
Feel you.
move things around a little bit.
Yeah. Seth had his own office before, and now we work together.
Yeah. Coworkers now.
Yeah.
Something else that I see that I think this is just something good to keep in mind is just because something is a business expense does not mean you're getting it for free.
Amen.
But it's a write-off.
What's that from?
Here.
It's great.
It's a write-off.
It's a write-off. David.
No, I have clients who,
They're like, it's free.
yeah, I'm like, okay, but you're still spending 10 grand on it.
Right. You're like, you still have to pay that money. You're just not getting
Yes.
taxed on it.
Yes.
Correct?
So I would
Okay.
say just make sure you are not spending $1 to save a penny. Don't use that as an excuse for like bad spending behavior. Because I have a lot of clients who at the end of the year, they'll come and ask for a tax projection. They'll say, hey, do I need to buy something
Right.
by the end of the year
Right.
to lower my taxes? And my answer to that is always, okay, here's kind of where we're at right now. This is what it's looking like you're going to owe. If you need to go buy a bulldozer or whatever for your company, go buy it. Like
Right.
you still need that bulldozer. We might as well do it this year. If you don't need the bulldozer that bad, if you can keep moving on forward without the bulldozer, the tax benefits from buying that bulldozer are not going to be equal with the amount that you spent on that bulldozer.
Right. It's never going to be like, you got this for free.
No.
That's really
No.
helpful.
It's
to
a
me.
coupon.
I feel like I've been looking at lenses this year and been very tempted. And then I'm like, but I operate well with the lenses I have. Like, I probably do need one more, but I don't need 3 more. Like,
Yeah.
nor could my bank account probably sustain 3 more. Lenses are expensive, y'all.
They are
They
very
are.
expensive. But like I mean,
No, yeah,
for example,
that's
I bought a nicer printer than I probably would have for work purposes, and I use it 96% of the time for work. But I needed a printer. I needed a nice printer. I print out things all the time. I scan things for clients all the time.
You didn't go buy a printer just because.
Yeah, I wasn't just like fiending for a printer. Yeah.
That's a really great tip because I feel like as a business owner, you can maybe have that mentality, especially with like a business account. You're like, it's all right. It's going to go on the business account. And you're like, you still have to pay for all of that stuff. It's just not maybe you don't have to pay taxes on it.
Well, and then you've also lost it as potential income too.
Yes.
Which I feel like can be, but no, that's super helpful because I feel like I've heard the opposite sometimes. I feel like a lot of times when you're watching like financial advice on Instagram or something, it's like, oh, this is a perfect time of year to go spend money. And it's like, if that's not wise, don't do it.
Yeah.
So I
if you need
appreciate
it, yes, go spend the money. Like if you actually need it
if
for
you
your
need
business.
it to run your business.
Yes.
Spend the money.
If not, just hold up.
No coupons over here.
I love that.
Another thing that is just a helpful tip, and this is relevant to right now, tax laws change. So this was not the case a few years ago, but any meals that you buy for like business meals, so for meetings or that kind of thing, they are only 50% deductible.
Interesting.
So on your profit and loss, you're taking the whole expense. But when I'm putting it into the tax return, I can only deduct half.
Interesting. And you said that's a law that like changes?
It kind of goes back and forth. It used to be
Yeah.
100%. It's been 50% for a couple years.
Wow.
Yeah. So
They're like only half of that meal was business related. The other half you had to eat.
it's part of it. They're like,
I guess
well,
so.
you
It's
eat.
like you have to eat dinner.
Yeah.
So
And there are some people who, I mean, I have some clients who are definitely more high dollar luxury. Both they're in luxury fields, but they also live luxury lives. And so there are meals that are pretty high dollar that they're business meals, but it is a lot of money. And I think that's the IRS's way of being like, okay, you still have to eat. This is still, it's kind of business related, but you don't need to eat this meal to conduct a business 100%.
Right. It's like a networking event, essentially.
Yes. Yes. Another thing is please keep track of your mileage. And like actually stay on top of it. And that's hard for me too. It's hard for me too. And I barely have to drive anywhere for work. But that's something that you want to keep a log of. You want to keep track of where you went, what date, what was the mileage.
Is that round trip?
Mhm.
Okay.
I think we might be noticing a pattern here of things overwhelm me and I just don't do them. I've tried. This is maybe where an accountant could be helpful. I've tried to do like the mileage thing on like TurboTax before, and I like started filling out my cars info, and then I just went, you know what? Actually, I don't have any mileage.
It can be a really good
tried
deduction.
a couple things. I've tried I think there's an app that you can get that tracks it as well, but I've also just tried of like keeping the location, and then when I do sit down, I'll like look it up on Google Maps and just do it that way because then it seems, I don't know, I'm going to forget to like turn the app on, or I don't want it tracking me all the time, or, you know, things like that. So it's like, I have, but I've, especially for my job, I feel like our job, you know, some of these venues can be hours, you know, an hour away. We traveled to quite a few this year. So like, there's a lot of mileage that goes into that.
That's a really good deduction.
Even every shoot, like I go to Franklin all the time for shoots. Well, that's like 45 minutes from my house, you know? So it's like,
I guess I've always just been like, I feel like the deduction isn't worth the effort, but I guess you're saying
it is.
It is.
It's actually like a very good deduction.
It is.
Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah.
What you guys are learning today is that I wing way too much, and I'm over here giving you business advice.
But at least it's mostly tax related, which isn't our expertise.
Yeah.
I'm good at answering emails.
You are really good at emails.
You can always do a little better the next year. It's not, I mean, yeah, if you don't take a mileage expense last year, maybe this coming year's the year.
It's the new goal.
Yeah.
Just write it down on your vision board. Write
fun.
mileage down. This is why I'm saying you got to treat yourself. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Buy yourself a nice coffee. Go get a sweater.
And then have
completed
Audrey
this.
remind you that you did not need to make those purchases.
Exactly. Only 50% of that coffee.
Sorry.
I was going to ask, and I totally forgot my question. So, Jordan, if you had any follow-ups, I will circle back. My brain has left the room.
I don't think so. But one question is there anything else getting ready for tax season? Are we ready to go to the next question?
I guess I have a couple other little points that
Let's
I can
hear
think of.
them.
We love
Okay.
it. This is amazing.
This is great.
Okay.
Tangible.
If you guys can't
Get
tell,
your pins
Audrey
out.
like did if you're watching, if you're not watching and
Yeah.
you're listening, she has like a notebook. She wrote notes. She came here like prepared to give us info,
Yeah.
and we freaking love it. It's
I
amazing.
just wanted to
I think this is
brainstorm a
gonna
little bit
be-
before I came.
No,
I
this
love
is
it.
this is great.
Okay, one thing. These are just a couple things that I have run into a lot this year with small business owners.
Okay.
First thing is everyone tries to create an LLC. Again, I'm not giving legal advice. It is not always necessary to create an LLC. That's kind of a different conversation. However, if you do have an LLC, you need to be keeping up with the requirements with your state.
Yes.
It is not just a federal thing. An LLC is filed under your state. So for Tennessee, that can mean a business tax. That can mean a franchise and excise tax. That means if you're selling anything, whether you're an LLC or not, and a physical product, you need to be paying sales tax. Those are all things that an accountant can be really helpful for because that is all pretty confusing. So just make sure if you are a legal entity with the state, you are also following the state regulations and not just worrying about your year-end tax return.
Yeah. Because they are separate.
They are separate, unfortunately.
And it will expire.
Yes.
And you won't have the liability coverage. Not that I've learned from experience or anything.
And it is fairly easy to. I have a lot of people whose theirs have expired, and you just have to take a couple steps, and we can get it right, set back up. But it is something to keep in mind. Along the same notes, if you do start an LLC and you put if you put anyone else on it, if there are two members of the LLC, even if it is your spouse, you have to file in the state of Tennessee, you have to file a partnership return separately from your individual tax return. That is more work. That is going to cost you more. It is not easy to file one of those if you're not an accountant. So don't just throw your spouse or someone else onto your LLC filing unless you have a good reason to. I think a lot of people do it because they feel like, well, if something happened to me, I would want to make sure my spouse gets the company assets.
There are ways to do that without adding your spouse to that.
Yeah, like isn't a business will a thing? Like you can set up, like,
We have an
legal-
operating agreement.
Okay.
So that's what we
Nice.
do because we do single member LLC.
Perfect.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think people put their spouse on there and they're like, okay, it's because like we're in this together.
Right.
And that's sweet. That's really sweet.
But you don't have to be nice
But
on your tax
you're gonna have to spend more
forms.
money. You're gonna have to spend
Yeah.
more money to get a
There's no
partnership
need.
return
No
done.
need.
It complicates things. Yeah, that's just something that's not made super clear when you're going through the filing process of an LLC. So I would
That's
just
great
say
advice.
that. The last thing I can think of is as a self-employed person, make sure that you are not forgetting about retirement. There are tax benefits to saving for retirement and using different accounts. That's something more that your financial advisor would talk with you about, and then there'd be collaboration with your accountant on that. But for different type of accounts, you can get tax deductions. What you take out when you're old and needing the retirement payouts will be taxed in different ways depending on what it is. But just when you're working a W-2 job, those things are kind of done for you a little more, which is a blessing. And it is easy to forget when you leave corporate and you're doing your own thing that it is on you to start setting aside for that. But there can be really positive tax implications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
great
kind of like a
advice.
boring, scary thing, but
No, but it has to be talked about because
Yeah.
you're right. Like we
Because the
don't.
amount that you need for retirement, like when you look at estimations of how much you genuinely, like even if you have a W-2, you should probably be saving for retirement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which we don't put it anywhere near enough into our retirement. Well, we do a little bit.
and that's better than nothing. And
Yeah.
starting the earlier you can start, the better.
And that's where we were at. We were like, we're doing zero. We can't afford a lot, but we're going to start something because then it's not zero.
Yeah.
This actually does. I have two more, I think, questions before we close. I feel like this is probably one of our longer episodes, which I'm super enthused
Yeah.
about.
I think people are going to
this
love
has
it.
been great. I have two questions. I'll start with one. For someone who knows nothing, like we have a friend that's a financial advisor. I actually want to get them on the podcast at some point in the next year or two. But could you lay out for people who don't know, like what the difference between a financial advisor and a CPA would be?
Yes. So a CPA, specifically what I do, I focus on bookkeeping and taxes. So I do people's books. I send reports. I put together their tax returns when the time comes. I do some tax planning, projection, all of that kind of thing. A financial advisor is more focused on bigger picture of your life. So they might have specific business recommendations. They might have retirement recommendations. And they should be aware too of the tax implications of those things. So there is some commingling. So for example, and this is usually more common with my higher net worth clients, I'm usually communicating with their financial advisor around tax time for them to figure out what they are trying to put into different accounts, what the taxable implications of that are. But I'm not the one setting up IRAs for them. I'm not the one setting up SEPs for them. I'm not the one setting up 401ks for them.
Right. Or talking about the percentages they need to contribute or what they
Yeah.
can contribute in a year.
Yeah, and some of that I can give them because it does depend on their taxable income, and that's why there is some collaboration there. But generally, the advice that I give, besides telling people what their tax projections are, is more general. And I say, here are some things to think about, and I think you should take that to a financial advisor.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then my next question would be, like, if someone is early on in their business or they've just been too overwhelmed to hire an accountant, if you were going to walk them through like the very basics of like, and I know this would vary a lot depending on industry and people, but like how expensive do you really think it is? Because I feel like sometimes when you're on the outside, you don't even want to reach out to someone and be like, hey, I want to hire you, and then have them give you a price and you're like, oh, that is not. So like, what would they expect from that? And then maybe what are the services that they could anticipate that would benefit them from a CPA? Like, does that question make sense?
Maybe like, is every client different? Like, do you have a different price for what they need based on like what the client
just so that people
needs?
like feel like they have information before they reach out to someone.
Yeah. I will say it's very different per person. I think it's different per area that you live in. It's different right now there's kind of an issue in the accounting industry of CPAs are aging out and there's not many CPAs coming in.
Wow.
And so while that is a benefit to me, I am dealing with a lot of clients someone who is like a 75-year-old has been doing their taxes for 20 years and keeping them at an $80 tax return.
Oh, wow.
And that does not cut it
not
anymore.
yeah.
I can't buy a house with that. I can't live my life with that. So we're kind of in a changing market with that. And I hesitate to throw a price out there because it very much depends on my client.
Yes.
But usually the way that I do it is for I offer monthly bookkeeping services, quarterly bookkeeping services. That I give a flat rate based on looking at their books.
Okay.
If they're coming in a mess, there's going to be a flat rate to clean up their books. But after that, it's going to be a monthly or quarterly rate where they know exactly what I will be providing, which is usually doing all their transactions, reconciling their bank accounts, providing reports, answering questions.
So it's like a full service if you don't want to do anything.
And I always provide an engagement letter. So it's basically like a contract.
Very cool.
That says what I'm doing, what I'm not doing, what's included in this, what's
Gotcha.
not.
Very clear.
Yes. Because you will, I think in any industry, there are always those clients who will have 1 million questions every single day. And you have to make sure that you are setting boundaries up for yourself so that you are not getting paid whatever, $350 a month to be in constant communication with someone.
Yeah, that's a full-time job.
Yes. And then for tax returns, usually I give a somewhat flat rate up front for a partnership return or a S corp return, so a true business return that's separate from an individual return. And then right now, which I need to go back and listen to your pricing your services podcast because, as y'all know, that I feel like that's just always evolving, trying to figure out the best way to price things.
Yeah.
The way I've started has been I have a 2-hour minimum, and that's a dollar amount. And then anything above that is hourly at another dollar amount. So I know the minimum I'm going to make on each return. And then if someone has a very large return, usually I'll give them an estimate, an estimated
that's
range.
Right, because it could be
your
different.
Client expect.
Yeah, you could have a million different, I don't know, transactions. Or
and you don't always know until you get into it. If it's a new client for the year, you definitely don't always know.
Right.
So I'll provide
helpful.
an estimate and I'll say, but if things are a lot more messy, then you're letting on.
Right.
I'm still happy to do it. It's just going to cost a little more.
Would you start to give them a heads up, like, hey, you said it would be this, I said it would be this, but this is going to take me way longer, and you would just like let them know that?
I do.
Gotcha.
I do.
That's awesome. So if someone wanted to hire an accountant and they specifically wanted to hire you, I know you don't have any kind of like social media for your business, so like how would they find you or reach out?
I guess the best way is by email.
Okay.
I need to work on my website, but my email address is schum, SCHUM, CPA @gmail.com.
Can you spell that one more time?
Yes, SCHUM, CPA @gmail.com. And I can see if I can help you from there. I do need to set up a website though.
Hey, if you need help with that, I've
started to
set up
say.
tons of Squarespace websites, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty like
We'll get you a headshot.
Yeah.
We'll get you set up, girl.
Yeah, let's talk about it after. We can do that.
Perfect.
Wait, one more question.
Go for it.
Every guest that we have, we ask them if you had one piece of advice for another creative entrepreneur, just entrepreneur in general, what would it be?
That can just be general business.
General
advice. It doesn't
business
have to be
advice.
accounting.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say just if you feel like you could do something in any business realm, like jump into it. I don't know anyone else who is my age and has an accounting firm.
Right.
But this transition into running my own firm has been the biggest blessing on my life in so many ways. I am so much happier in my work-life balance. I'm so much happier with my home life. I'm so much happier interacting with my clients in a way that I wasn't able to do as a cog in the machine at the firm. I learned a lot there. And there are so many things that I'm grateful for the different seasons that came before this. But I think I could have not done it out of fear. And a lot of people feel like they need to stay in a system for a really long time before there's any way that they can get out of it.
Yeah.
But you can just kind of take the leap and see if it works. And if it doesn't, it's not a tattoo and you can go back.
Yes.
Just try it.
And you can hire people like her to help you through the scary parts.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the problems, we've talked about this before too, is like, creatives especially get into something because they love to paint or they love to take pictures or they love to do this. And then all of the bookkeeping and accounting, it's scary, right? That's what holds us back.
Yeah, like as I've clearly admitted today, there are so many things where I'm like, I'm just not gonna.
Right. And to run a good business, you do need to. And so I think that's great advice. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I think this is going to be the best episode yet.
I honestly agree. I've loved it. So if you guys want We know you're listening to the podcast on whatever platform you've chosen. It's on
Yes.
Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Where can you find us on social media though, Jordan?
On social media, you can find us at with.creativecompany. And that is Instagram and TikTok. Oh, wait.
No, it's going to be TikTok.
It's gonna be
when we
TikTok.
eventually set one up.
We will do the TikToks. And we'll put your information down as well. We'll write your email in like the bio or the post comments so everybody can
So you guys can
get at
find
ya.
Audrey and reach out.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Have a great week, everybody.
Bye.